Want to know how the EastWest Hollywood library works? Stay tuned. Hi there, this is Sam with Second Tier Sound. Really nice to see you here. I create videos on how to make composing and writing a lot easier in a DAW. If you like that kind of content and want to support me to create more videos like this, then perhaps subscribe or even consider joining my Patreon. So let's get going with the EastWest Hollywood Brass Library. So let's open up the Play Engine. And before we get started, I wanted to show you something that is really important if you didn't know this already. That is the purge function. Here I have a patch loaded. If I click purge, then all the notes that I haven't played are removed. So I have played some notes here and they stay in memory. If I click reset and then purge, everything is gone from memory. And there it's again. Very important to know, for example, if you have a big template with lots of instruments, you can save a lot of RAM by removing the ones you don't use. Another really important thing you absolutely cannot forget is to exclude your Play library folders from your antivirus if you haven't done so already. This makes sure that the Play engine doesn't take forever when you load an instrument. And if you haven't done that, it won't be fun and the Play engine won't be very playful. Well, let's look at what the EastWest Hollywood Brass has included in its library. You have the normal stuff, French horns, trumpets, cimbasso, trombones, tuba. One thing that really stands out about this library is the amount of options you have, not just in terms of articulations, but also how many players you can have. This is really important for good dynamics and consistency. Let's take a look at that right now. Why are there, for example, you have solo French horn, then you have 2 French horns and 6 French horns? Well, it's quite straightforward. More instruments mean a bigger, louder sound. So you can think of it that way. That's great. But another way is also voicing, which I find really important. So here we have, for example, 1 French horn. Now, if I just wanted that louder, obviously I can have 2 French horns playing. And so on. I could have 6 players if I want a really big sound. Let's say I've loaded up a 2 French horn patch to play a melody in unison. Nothing wrong there, right? But let's say I suddenly want to split those 2 instruments up so they play different notes individually, creating a simple harmony. Then it wouldn't be so wise to use the same patch, because then each key would represent 2 players, so suddenly I would have 4 players. So I wouldn't do that. I would actually go and load up a single horn player sus and play the 2 parts there. So then I stay consistent with how many voices, how many instruments are playing at the same time. And you see you have the 2 and the 6 and the solos, so you can mix and match the instruments how you like to create different groups. And there's nothing wrong with suddenly having 6 players and then suddenly having 1 player back and forth. That is totally okay. But if you're trying to sound consistent with a certain line and you realize it sounds a bit weird, look into how you do the voices here, how many players you're using. Now, some of you might think that this is getting too complex too quickly. I mean, I don't have time for this kind of fiddling about, articulations back and forth. I will never get any music done, right? So it's very important that you have a good template set up from the start, which I'll show in this video here. And you can also look for a video where I talk about 2 composition styles, which further shows how you can do this really well. And when you have that set up, then it's just a matter of finding a good sketch patch, which I will talk about in a little while. And when you're done with that, we're happy with the results, you just apply the different parts to different articulations or different numbers of players, and you will actually get a really professional, good sounding result very quickly. Let's look at the subfolders in all of the instruments. They all follow the same structure, so if you know one folder, you will know them all. Let's look at the solo French horn and start with long. So all these abbreviations work the same in each folder. There's some variances. Maybe there is a folder that doesn't have that particular patch, but you will understand how it works. Let's start with the top one here. 1FH, Legato repetition round robin 4. Well, 1FH obviously stands for the instrument, one French horn, and it's good that it's there so you know if you're using one or two players, for example. Then legato repetition. Maybe not the best word there because this is not a legato patch. I think they're referring to the idea that two notes together played in a legato way, they can be repeated well without it sounding weird. And then you have 4 variations of that repeating sample. So if I hit the key several times, you will hear that it sounds a little bit different each time. And that is to stop the machine gun effect where all the samples sound the same. So then we have the portato, long and short. And it's sort of a performance sample. It has a little bit of an arc in there. This is controlled only by velocity, how hard I hit the keys, not with the mod wheel. So if I hit it really hard, so I'm not doing this with the mod wheel. This is the patch doing that itself, and soft. Nice little arc that is not so easy to do by yourself, so it can be good to add. And the short version, obviously. I just wanted to mention that this is not a tempo synced patch, meaning that it won't correct itself to the tempo you have set in your DAW. So sometimes this can be a little bit tricky to align properly. Then we have a sus accent and a light version of that. LT stands for light. And it just adds an accent if you hit the keys hard enough in the beginning. So I was doing this well with my mod wheel there, but if I just hit the keys softly, nothing, hit them hard, you hear there's an attack there. It can be very useful for the sforzando effect. Very effective for that. And the light version sounds pretty much the same. It just has less dynamic layers, giving you less dynamic options. But if you don't need it, you can save some RAM that way. Then we have sus, light, instead of writing LT. Maybe other people did this one. And then sus. These are the same, just this one has less dynamic layers. And it's a long patch without any attack in it. Then we have marcato long. And this works this way that you have 2 layers in this patch. And one layer is controlled with velocity, how hard you hit the keys, and the other layer is controlled with the mod wheel. For example, if I have the mod wheel all the way down and I hit the keys really hard like this, still holding the keys, you see the first layer there, bow, that is the marcato. And I control that with the velocity. So if I hit softer, it's not as much. And if I hit really soft, it's hardly there. If I have the mod wheel all the way up and hit the keys hard, you will hear that marcato swell, but then it continues being loud. This is quite useful if you want to have a little bit more realistic sounding horns. You can do the opposite as well. Hit really soft and have the mod wheel all the way up. And then you get sort of a crescendo there. The pitch waiver, I think, really belongs in the effects. Sounds like this. Really good for zombie apocalyptic stuff. And so on. Yep, nice effect. That's it for the longs. Let's look at the shorts. And right off the bat, your workhorse and pretty much the only one you need is the mod speed one. Let's talk about that one later. Let's look at the other ones, and they are still good. And then we get back to this baby here. Here we have marcato long round robin mod. And you can see this one here says Marcato long round robin without mod. So these two is the same patch. They're just controlled differently. So this one here is quite good because no matter how hard or soft I hit the keys, it doesn't matter. What matters is what position the mod wheel is in. So if it's all the way up, I will get the loud sound. All the way down, soft. Or in between. If I use this one, I get the same patch, but now I control it with how hard I hit the keys. Unless you're a really well-trained pianist, it might be really difficult to hit the keys consistently with this patch, meaning each finger will have different velocity. Quite common actually, even if you're well-trained. So it's good to have this mod patch so you don't have to worry about that. But also it's good to have the other one in case you want each key or each note that is to have a different attack. Same thing here, you have the shorter Marcato with the mod wheel. So and then you have repetitions, and you should always use the number that is closest to your BPM. In this case, 120 is exactly what I have, so it lasts for 1 bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go. And then it has a nice Marcato at the end. Pretty good performance sample. Then we have a sorsando, a recorded one. Control with the velocity layer. I don't use it so much because I think I can create a better one with the accent patches instead. I have more control of the length because this one is not tempo synced either, so it might not fit your rhythm. Otherwise, it's nice. Then we have staccatissimo, either with mod or with velocity layer. Okay, so the mod wheel. This is a great patch. No matter what instrument you use, you should remember the short mod speed. Why this is such a great workhorse, and in some cases, the only patch you will ever need. Why is that? Well, it has most of the articulations you need, except legato and effects. All the way up mod wheel, I have longs. If I have the mod wheel in the middle. And then I have shorts all the way down. I wanted to give you a pro tip using this library that will really speed up your workflow. Use this solo French horn mod speed patch for your sketch writing when you're sketching out ideas. And there are several reasons why this is really good. The first one you might not think about, but if each key is representing one player, then it will sound more natural when you try out chords for a brass ensemble. If you have another patch with 2 or 6 players, it will sound too much, too overwhelming and unnatural if you play bigger chords. So when it sounds more natural, you get more inspired. So that's really important. The other thing is that the French horn has a pretty good register. It can go quite high and quite low. Not as high as trumpets and not as low as trombones and tuba, obviously. But if you sketch out your ideas, you can do quite a lot here. You can always add other parts later if you want more higher pizzazz, so to speak, with the trumpets, or you want to get lower and get more bass with the tubas and trombone. But you have an idea, and then you sketch that out and then just move the parts to the different instruments or articulations. So quite quickly, you can go from a simple idea to a very good professional sounding result. Okay, let's look at effects. The effects are a little bit different depending on the instrument because different instruments have different effects. But it's basically all the stuff that you can't really do with the other patches. So for example, a nice crescendo, you have fast, middle, and slow, or the mod speed, where you can do all of them depending where the mod wheel is. Let's try the fast one. Slower. And the slowest one. Very good, because sometimes these patches are hard to do manually. But remember again, these are not tempo synced. Then we have shake, medium, and slow. rip trill, rips, shake fast, medium, and a trill half note, and so on. Legato, probably the most expressive folder and the one you will use the most if you only have one note per instrument. Let's look at the legato slur accent. This is a legato patch that has an accent in there if you hit the keys hard enough. So you can do sort of sforzando. Very effective for that. Then you have legato slur. Actually, these three are the same, just lighter versions. I don't know why they added LT3 here. What happened to LT2? Anyway, so legato slur light, and legato slur light 3. They're sort of the same, but less dynamic layers. So they just don't have an accent in there. Then you have the runs, which is quite useful. You might have to program this in, but it sounds like a staccato run. Works better when you program it in, but it's a nice addition. Then we have mutes. Quite happy about that because a few libraries don't. And this is good for your, mystical crime thriller writing. You have an accent here as well. Yeah, and so on. Key switches, as you might know from my other videos, I don't use very often. I'm not against key switches. They work great in certain libraries. I just think Play is not made for this. But I still want to say that I obviously know how this works. I'm just going to explain why I don't use it. And if you go to the Play here, you can see all the articulations here. And you can't see it on my screen because I have a keyboard here. But obviously in the Play engine, the keys are blue and you know what keys to hit, sort of. If you like the key switch patch here in EastWest, then all the power to you. I have no problem with that. Go ahead and create great music. I just wanted to explain why I don't do it myself, and this might be interesting to you. I didn't explain it very well in the last video. So I want my key switches to be set up a very specific way. In fact, I want all my instruments to be the same. So I don't have to worry about, is it this one or this one or this one? I just know exactly this is it, and I can create my music instantly. And sometimes I have a lit keyboard that shows that, and that helps. But otherwise, I really want that. And EastWest engine, the Play engine, actually is quite limited on where you can put your key switches. So I can't do it the way I want it. And that is also a reason why I choose more and more to have the articulation on the screen. Like each channel is one articulation. It's a lot easier to know what you're doing that way. You don't have to fiddle around and wonder what key switch you're on. And it loads up a bunch of stuff that I'm not interested in most of the time. I want to create my own patches. So it's twofold. Use memory that I think is a waste, and then it doesn't load those patches that I want. But if you love key switches, try this one. It's just that you miss a lot of articulations as well. One that I can see a little bit more a case for is the effect one, because then instead of having to load all these separately, you have them all together, which can be, a little bit easier. Obviously, if you want to save some memory, then just load one of them. Let's look at some folders that are a little bit different within this library, if you look for them. And the first one is in solo trombone. They actually have a jazz folder. And this is quite fun. It adds a few effects that are more jazzy. So this is great for comedy writing, for Gershwin kind of music, and even big band. I really like this addition, the jazz folder in the trombone. It's a great addition, and it actually took me a while before I discovered it. But it makes me wonder, why isn't there a jazz folder in the trumpets? They could really use that. They have the fall, but otherwise there's not much more than that. So it makes me wonder if this was an afterthought or they forgot to complete it, because it really helps if you want to do that sort of jazzy stuff. But anyway, it's great. Simbasso is kind of, if you take a trombone and a trumpet and put them together and bend them in half, and then you get a very weird looking instrument. It's really good for those low, nasty sounds, especially in big bombastic movies, you know? It goes really low, so you can... The difference between Simbasso and tuba, I mean, they're not really the same instrument at all, but they are within the same register, you could say. It is that tuba is more melodic and more a solo instrument and rounder in the sound, more warm, while Simbasso is more nasty, you could say, to simplify it. But they're both good to add in the low end to create that warmer, bassier sound. Another thing in this library that is really nice if you want to create big low end, it's the low brass, which is sort of a combination of, I think, Simbasso and trombones, maybe even a tuba. And you get, just by one note even, the Hans Zimmer sound. If you hit two keys at the same time, even nastier. So that was just very loud. You can obviously play softer with this one. And you have quite a few articulations here, so it's not just the sound. You can really play with this instrument, and it really adds well to the bottom end of the brass, especially if you move it in carefully and subtly. So let's look a little bit at the problems that this library has. And the first problem is that there aren't that many. It's actually a really good library, despite its age and all that. It's a really solid, good sounding library. And I wanted to tell you that obviously there are better libraries out there, newer ones, but not a lot better. So think about this. If you have this library lying around or you have the subscription, before you pay a lot of money for a new fantastic library, really consider this. Because it's how you master a library. That's how you sound good. It's not the latest bells and whistles. And yes, there are some good libraries out there, but not many really beat this guy. I'm serious about that. You can create really good results here. I just wanted to say that. So I'm all about saving money here, Anyway, let's look at the few nitpicks I have about this library. The first one is it's not consistent. It's difficult to find what the patches mean. And that's probably why you're watching this video, right? So the names, they use light sometimes LT, they skip it out sometimes to show that there's a mod wheel, sometimes they don't. They haven't mentioned anything about niente. All the patches have niente, basically, where you go all the way down with the expression layer, the note disappears. Gone, even though I'm holding down the key. So they all have niente. Maybe it says in the manual somewhere, that could be true. But it's not consistent. It's hard to figure out if you're supposed to use the mod wheel or not, or if it's a velocity layer or not. This is clearly nitpicking, but I'm just saying, sometimes you don't know. You might turn your mod wheel up and down and nothing happens. Well, because this patch, you control it with the velocity layer. So there's also one legato thing here in all of the instruments that I don't like. If you go into the legato and you choose this accent, it seems like it works quite okay on the higher velocity layer. But as soon as you go down, it sounds awful. I think this is a miss that when you go down in the dynamic layer, the accent doesn't follow the slur, so it sounds like a weird short or something. It doesn't work. So if you want a smooth legato sound, I would say stick mostly with this baby. Because it works great on all the dynamic layers. The accent is still important and it can be really good to create those sforzandos, for example, and then you continue with another melody line. But I would say mostly use this legato slur, then you will get nice legatos. So that's it. I really hope you have a much deeper understanding on how this library really works. Now, the only problem is, of course, to go out and write music with it. But I'm trying to support you there as well. I have plenty of videos showing you what you can do. and how you can get more creative with your music. If you like these kind of videos, then you can always support me by hitting the like button, or perhaps subscribe, or even write a nice comment, or give good advice to other people who want to learn more about this. And if you want to go beyond the call of duty, so to speak, you can always join my Patreon, where you won't only support me, but actually you can get access to the MIDI files that I create for these examples or for these intros as well. Anyway, it's been fun. Until a next video, this is Sam signing out. Take care.